Howdy, I'm Jammer. So, I'm kind of excited because I've been wanting to do a video like this for quite some time. So, anybody who watches this channel probably knows I like comics. They probably know that I like comics a lot. And one of the things that I've sort of talked about a lot is the notion of something called a bound trade. Now, an example of a bound trade would be this book right here, HellBlazer, Dangerous Habits. This book collects individual issues, specifically issues 34 through 46 of the HellBlazer series. Now, this book is actually kind of interesting because it's one of the biggest inspirations for the film Constantine that starred Keanu Reeves, came out, I think, in the early 2000s, and honestly is not that bad a movie. It gets a lot of undue crap, at least in my opinion. But anyway, I've been thinking over and over and over again that most of the time I'm mostly just doing reviews of bound trades, and at the same time, when we're talking about comics, oftentimes the experience of reading a comic book is not always reading a bound trade, or at least it's not for everybody. There's some people, in fact a lot of people, who like the individual issues. And I thought, why not try doing a couple of individual issues for this channel and just make some videos that's just one single comic? And so, especially when I'm looking at this series, HellBlazer, I'm thinking there should be a good one I could do. And there's probably no better example of like a nice individual issue in my mind than this one here, HellBlazer number 27, Hold Me, by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean. This issue, I'm not going to lie, is really hard to track down. And the reason for this is simple. The speculators have come in and just ripped this comic to shreds. Which is to say, they've basically grabbed up all the issues that you find. There wasn't a lot of prints of this one, and so what issues do exist, you're probably only going to be able to find it on eBay. But, as my friend Michael of Ground Zero is so fond of saying, sometimes the real joy of comic collecting is just finding little books like this in the dollar bin somewhere and going, ooh, yes, that's the one I want. So, today's video is going to be about just HellBlazer number 27. Let's get into it. So, when we're talking about... Actually, hold on. I'm going to pause it real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. My dog was crying. He was hungry, so I was like, yeah, I should probably feed my dog, you know. On the notion of empathy, by the way, I want to talk a little bit about what HellBlazer issue number 27 actually is. Now, note, my issue I just discovered this morning is kind of falling apart, so I'm going to be very, very careful in terms of the actual, in terms of handling the book here. But when we're talking about HellBlazer number 27, this is a kind of story that's usually thrown out in comics, normally in like big, the long sort of collection of comics. You can have somewhere like 100 issues or sometimes even more. And sometimes writers and artists who are part of an ongoing series, you know, need a break. So what comic companies will do is they'll bring in like a big name or even just a smaller name, people like Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean, you know, two nobodies who aren't going anywhere and haven't done anything with their careers. These are jokes, by the way. I hope you're appreciating this. And so they gave them HellBlazer and said, hey, tell us a quick little story. Now, number 27 begins with a story of a number of homeless individuals who, on a very, very cold night in London, didn't have a place to stay. And, well, as unfortunately happens from time to time, they eventually wound up freezing to death, as you'll see here in this really, really beautiful page spread. Now, the story mostly focuses on a man by the name of Jacko who didn't get a chance to sort of, you know, find somebody to help him keep warm. And so you see him kind of fading away, and then it leads into John Constantine grabbing a taxi. Now, it doesn't seem terribly important right off the bat, but the fact that nobody held Jacko is really important. Because then, as Constantine goes into his taxi, you'll be able to read that the taxi driver in question begins to make a lot of long, rambling diatribes about race and racism and how these people don't know how to live, and John Constantine eventually cusses him out and tells him that he is an idiot. It then moves to John going to a party and encountering a woman by the name of, Anthea. She's a very lovely woman. John talks about how he finds her attractive. takes him back to her place, and John eventually discovers that she's trying to get him to sleep with her so that she and her partner can have a baby. Now, this is something that in today's sort of contemporary cultural landscape isn't as common. As she points out here in the book, in the old days, aka the periods of like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it wasn't uncommon for lesbian couples who wanted to have a child together to get one of their friends who happened to be gay to basically just ejaculate and then use the sperm for kind of quasi or pseudo in vitro fertilization. This narrative here is something that's has popped up occasionally in the culture. There's actually one example of this in the hit television show The L Word, where Tina, and I can't remember her partner's name, but they try to seduce a guy so that they can effectively use his sperm for a child, and he reacts very negatively, as John Constantine reacts negatively, and he says, "I'm angry, my pride is hurt," and then he leaves her place. Now, at the same time this interaction is taking place, we get a return of Jacko. And let me go back to the page in question. We see a woman in her apartment, kind of just taking care of herself. Jacko appears, and we discover, a ghost. His spirit has effectively reincarnated, and he's asking people, please, please, hold me, hold me. The woman refuses, Jacko holds her nonetheless, and the woman dies. When Constantine leaves Anthea's apartment, he discovers this woman's daughter, and then makes their way into the apartment to see if he can't do anything to help, where he discovers Jacko there, and Jacko says, hold me, hold me. And what's important here is that John Constantine actually does. And by offering the simple act of kindness as a hug, Jacko disappears. At the very, very last page of this book, Constantine offers a really interesting monologue, and I'll just read it here for you. All he wanted was for someone to care about him, someone to hold him, someone to warm him. Nobody would. When we hold each other in the darkness, it doesn't make the darkness go away. The bad things are still out there. The nightmares are still walking. When we hold each other, we feel not safe, but better. It's all right, we whisper. I'm here. I love you. And we lie. I'll never leave you. For just a moment or two, the darkness doesn't seem so bad when we hold each other. John Constantine returns to Anthea's apartment. He still has Jacko's smell on him. He's shaken. He's disturbed. And you see the exchange of, John, are you all right? What's happened? God, you smell awful. What's the matter? Anthea, please, shut up. Just hold me. And then it ends with the image of Jacko sleeping peacefully. Now, wow. That's a hell of a story. And also, more importantly, when we're talking about like a HellBlazer comic, that's kind of unique, because anybody who's read any John Constantine comics knows that this is the work of a kind of cockneyed, wise-ass sorcerer supreme. He's encountering demons and monsters and witches and all manner of sort of magical cosmic chaos. The story of John Constantine encountering the ghost of a homeless man who simply wants a hug doesn't seem at first, if you hear my stomach, please ignore it. I haven't eaten yet today. But this story at first doesn't really seem to be a typical HellBlazer comic. But at the same time, it does in a really interesting way, because one of the problems with the Constantine character is, far more often than not, he's presented as kind of this sociopathic wise ass who doesn't care about anybody else, and he's always just playing some kind of long game or con. But longtime fans of the character, people like me, understand that on the surface, yes, that is most definitely the cartoon character of John Constantine, but one of the appeals of HellBlazer, the comic, is you understand, yes, he's kind of a shuckster, he's kind of a wise ass, but at the same time, he's still a human being who has a tremendous capacity for empathy. And so when we talk about HellBlazer number 27, my dog's barking at something outside, probably the neighbors. When we talk about HellBlazer number 27, this book is really, really beautiful for the way it manages to explore empathy. If you look at the fact that Jacko was left out in the cold, if you look at the racist taxi driver, if you look at the way John lashed out at Anthea for simply wanting the comfort having a child, again, it's a constant exploration of the way that we offer empathy to other people and how important that empathy can be. My dog is shuffling back and forth. Give me 2 seconds. I'm back again. This was supposed to be, I promise, like a short little sweet 15-minute video just talking about this one issue, but my dogs are being so crazy today. But it's all right. It keeps things interesting. Hold Me, HellBlazer number 27, is a really interesting opportunity to discuss human empathy and the way we offer empathy to other people. If I can offer just some of my own personal experience, I work at a public library, and one of the realities of working in the library is you get homeless individuals coming to the library. And that's predominantly because it's one of the last spaces in this world where people can come and just be without any expectation. If you walk into a bookstore, you're expected to buy a book. If you walk into, say, an appliance store, you're expected to buy a television or a blender or what have you. If you work into just about any space, there's some expectation. But in a library, there isn't an expectation. It's just, hey, come on in. It's Texas, enjoy the air conditioning, and just take a moment to just be. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's really important that such spaces like that exist because it's an opportunity for us to empathize with somebody else's plight. Life is hard. We all recognize that. And especially in this story, we're able to observe again that when we look at homeless individuals, continually the struggle is empathy. And I can't even begin to describe all the training that I've had to help me become aware of the privileges that I have had as somebody who has a home, who is in the middle class, who's comfortable like that. It's important to challenge myself, to empathize with people, because more than just offering these people a helping hand, it's also an opportunity to remind myself why I do what I do, which is to just be there. And even if I'm not physically holding somebody, I'm at least offering a kind of pseudo hug in the form of, come on in, let me offer you the AC, let me offer you a book to read, let me at least just offer the opportunity to say, hey Tom, how you doing? You holding up okay? It's little acts of kindness in this sort of overall darkness of our day-to-day lives that really matter. And so narratively, HellBlazer number 27 is beautiful, and yet another example of why Neil Gaiman is such an amazing artist. But hopefully, while I was showing you the images too, you'll understand why this is such a beautiful book, because Dave McKean is probably in his element. Now, whenever Dave McKean and Neil Gaiman work together, it's art, period. I will fight somebody to my last breath. But especially in this book as well, you can see the way he approaches the line work, the way he approaches the construction of the characters, the way he sets up the panels is glorious, because his typical sort of angular forms, his arrangement of the panels on the page to really sort of convey information non-verbally, really helps build the story that Gaiman is trying to tell. Looking at this page especially, the image of Jacko separate and apart from these two individuals who are seeking shelter from this intense and bitter cold and then quietly fading away. It's a really solid metaphor for the way that human bodies, especially when we're talking about homeless individuals, can sometimes be perceived. Oftentimes we look away because we don't want to acknowledge that such suffering can actually exist. But it does. And it's important that we at least recognize that suffering. And just again, this comic is worth it. Well, one, because you get cool little fun advertisements in it for this. I have no idea what this is, but it must have been fun. But then also, too, look at just the construction of that building. Look at the set pieces. Look at the way that you're able to just sort of feel Constantine and Anthea just approaching her apartment complex. You feel in this world. But at the same time, Dave McKean's art style leaves such a possibility for you to feel like you're just reading the pages of a dream, just sort of condensed into space. This page of Jacko just quietly saying, please hold me. It's almost heartbreaking. And that's what a good cartoonist should do. It should use art to really enforce the narrative, to capture the emotions that the reader really wants to feel. And this two-page spread here, where Constantine holds Jacko and then Jacko slowly disappears, it's stunning and gorgeous. And it makes me remember why I wanted to read this story in the first place. I'll probably end it right here because I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I just wanted to sort of use this story as an opportunity to show how individual issues can be a really enjoyable experience in and of themselves. And as lovers of comics and the form of comics, we really should take the time and effort to understand how one single issue of an ongoing series can really be a work of art in and of itself. Okay, I'll call it a day there. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. So this video is probably going to be weird because I'm going to try to upload it to YouTube today and hopefully try to post it either today or tomorrow, which is weird because technically speaking, I've got like 4 or 5 more videos that are scheduled out all the way through like August, and I'm recording this on June 5th or 6th. So yeah, so this is hopefully the start of an ongoing series where I review individual issues. Please stay tuned for that. Also, don't forget, I have begun a Patreon account for this channel. It is in the description section below. There will be a link tree to my website, my Instagram, and most importantly, the Patreon account where for $1 a month, you can help this channel, you know, continue. So, hey, $1 a month, you got a few pennies in your pocket, or even if you want to do just a one-time donation of $1, I will appreciate you immensely. I will shout your name out to the heavens and say, bless you. May you have all the hot tubs and endless free coffees that you could ever aspire to. Now, when it's coming to HellBlazer number 27, like I said, go to your local comic book shop. My local comic book shop, Ground Zero, didn't have a copy of it because, unfortunately, the speculators really love this book. So, go to your comic book shop, check out the dollar bin section, or just check out the single bin section and look for HellBlazer. Typically, the series at that time, I believe, was being written by Garth Ennis. So go to your shop, ask them about it. They might have a copy either in the boxes or they might have one behind the desk. You never know. Also, though, if you would prefer to read this book just in, say, a larger collection, try the bound trades, which your comic book shop will probably also have, or your public library may have it. And in terms of HellBlazer number 27, it should be in... this is issue number 5, which collects issues number 34 through 46. So I would try volume 4 of HellBlazer. It should be in that one. And as always, thank you so much for your time. I tremendously appreciate it. Go read some comics.